Nigeria has been good to you and so on. It, of course, brings to mind some of the roles and some of the frustrations that have come from these roles. Let me not go too far back. One of the seminal moments, and I use that word myself, was the Oputa panel. It had never happened before in the country. When that panel was set up and people were asked to come, a lot of people who had grievances dating back 50 years in some instances came to appear. Some of them with rumpled, old evidence, but nevertheless what they thought would help. And the panel went all over the country. You were one of its leading lights. You went all over the country at the time. And you produced a report. And I remember one of the previous occasions when I spoke to you, I asked the question, what happened to the Oputa panel report? Because a lot of motion went on, but at the end of the day, very little action did we see at the end of the day. As someone who was involved and knew what was produced, did you think that our lack of action on that document, on that process, as a country and as a society, was also a seminal moment in the decision as to whether we were going forward or we were going backwards?
Nigerians very foolishly, let me say, think that things self-activate or self-propel themselves. There has to be what you call a primary mover. That is, what moves, how did you get here? You had to have set out from your house to start a journey. You got into a car, you got into a plane, and so on. So, and I hear Nigerians saying rather foolishly, this election that is coming, we must get it right. I say, what do you mean getting it right? Okay, yeah, we must make sure we vote for the right candidate. Is there anything like the right candidate? Is there anything like a right woman to marry or a right husband to marry? Many of these things come as a result of a lot of work. Nigerians think that if we get it right, we've elected. So what do you mean by getting it right? Is it that we had elections, no violence, nothing? Well, the Germans got it right when Hitler became chancellor. They got it right. So, and there is no correlation between electoral outcomes and the things that follow. So when we finished Oputa panel, it had all the ingredients that scholars and activists needed to begin a little bit of robust conversation. But let me tell you, when I finished, I was to go to NIPS. And then again, my friend, Dr. Fahimi, we were just chatting. And he said to me, he said, so now you're finished Oputa panel, what next? I said, no, I've just gotten a chance. I'm going to go to NIPS. Because when I went to President Obasanjo, I said, look, I want to go to NIPS. No, I called General Garba, who was in China, was a good friend of mine. He said, no, I'm not the one responsible for recruitment. It's the president. So I went to President Obasanjo. He said, you want to go to NIPS? I said, yeah. To do what? I said, no, to pursue the president. No. If you want me to give you the center to run, I'll give you. But you can't go there as a student. I said, no, I want to go there as a student. He said, no. Then finally he said, okay, under the vice president. So I went to Alhaji Atiku. He said that he was very excited, very delighted. And the Atiku process made them take me. But in between this, I met Dr. Fahimi. I happened to be in London also. We cut off. He said, what about you? I said very proudly, I'm going to go to NIPS. He said, NIPS? I said, yes. He said, what are you going to do in NIPS? Come to Oxford. Come and take a fellowship in Oxford. I said, I don't know anybody in Oxford. I have blessed memories in Oxford, but how do you? He said, no. Anyway, it's a long story, but Oxford made me an offer. So I was like, I can't go to Oxford any day, but I can go to NIPS any day I want. When I go to Oxford, I ended up doing 3 different seminars for the African Studies program. Universities were calling me here and there in Europe and the UK. They wanted to hear about Oputa panel. At a point, I literally had to shut down. But as I'm talking to you now, there's not a single Nigerian university, not a single seminary, that is my own constituency, that ever said to me, hey, Father Kukah, this Oputa panel can we come and hear? All we are hearing was people, illiterate and ignorant people, just throwing stones. Hey, this happened. Then they now came back to say, the government did not release the report. The report was later on the internet. If you read my book, Witness to Justice, the last section, I had an appendix, yes, which was a letter I wrote to President Obasanjo. And that letter, you can read the text. I was visibly and viscerally angry. But What I'm saying, in effect, is that what happened, the way these things work and the way politics works, you take the promises that a state has made and then confront the state. So unless there is, and I've said it severally, Nigerians can elect an angel to come and govern Nigeria. Nothing is going to happen unless we colonize the streets and have the capacity to agitate and bang on doors and say to people, we don't want this. Even if it takes us days and it take our life. But, you know, the elite are just sitting there drinking cheap brandy and watching golf and expecting things to change. And then when they have a new president, they all rush there and then try to fix all the things. Because the elite are benefiting from this carcass of a state. But in the final analysis, that is why we have civil society activism. In 1998, I published a book titled Democracy and Civil Society. I started out writing an article. And then I suddenly discovered from my research that, look, I didn't know anything about civil society, but I started work. By the time I finished, I completed a book. And it's one of the first things I published. For me, it was my gift to Nigerians preparatory to democracy in 1999. And my conclusion in the book is that democracy without, civil society and dictatorship cancel themselves out. So if we want a vibrant democracy, civil society must be alert. But unfortunately for us, a lot of the people who were active in civil society, Olisa Agbakoba, Ayo, Obe, Kayode Fayemi, Festus Okoye, all of us, people decided to go to sleep because they thought that the end of military rule was the beginning of democracy. So they never got in the ring. And what did the military do? They just brought back their friends and as governors and senators and so. None of that has changed. We are still under the leadership of the military. Our president is a former general. Just if you are measuring how far we've covered on the route of democracy. So that where we are is our inability to interrogate the system and our inability to realize that nothing comes for free. Everything has to be contested and fought for. So you can